Would you look at that? Hi, I'm Joe, and those were the words first spoken by Uhura when the starship USS Excelsior was introduced in Star Trek III. This was the movie Excelsior is best remembered for, where Kirk called it the Great Experiment. Sulu seemed excited by the prospect of it having transwarp drive, and Scotty scoffed at such a notion just before learning that Starfleet was assigning him there, while the rest of the Enterprise crew was getting extended shore leave. I swear, engineers always being disrespected. Anyway, Excelsior eventually pursues the Enterprise when Kirk and his crew steal it, but the pursuit is short because the Excelsior comically sputters to a halt when it tries to engage the transwarp drive because Scotty has sabotaged it. So that's the most famous appearance of that ship, but it appeared 3 more times. It had a brief cameo in Star Trek IV when the crew is flying to its new ship, which turned out to be the Enterprise A, another BlueBrixx model I have in this scale, even though Sulu still hoped for Excelsior. In Star Trek VI, Sulu gets his wish and is shown as captain of the Excelsior and plays a significant role in first encountering the explosion of the Klingon moon and in helping the Enterprise battle the cloaked Klingon bird of prey. Finally, Excelsior appears again in the Voyager episode Flashback, where Tuvok relives a memory of serving on the Excelsior during the events of Star Trek VI. This was an episode to celebrate the 30th anniversary of Star Trek, and featured appearances by George Takei as Sulu, Michael Ansara as the Klingon Kang, a character from the original series who wasn't even in the movies, and at least 2 of the actors from the Excelsior bridge crew in Star Trek VI. Plus, Grace Lee Whitney, who played Janice Rand in Season 1 of the original series, and had appearances in 4 of the 6 original cast movies, but has a more substantial role in this episode. My point here is that there is probably more time spent on the Excelsior in this episode than all the movies together. The model for the Excelsior appears to be used many more times as other ships in Star Trek The Next Generation and in Deep Space Nine. Getting back to the model, this one has 585 pieces, and I paid €35 for it. But actually less than that because of the VAT, but then more than that because of the shipping. And it's in the same scale as the Starship Voyager that I built earlier. There are no stickers in this set, but there are printed pieces that come in separate Ziploc bags. There was an extra bag of pieces it told me to use. These were just 1x12 plates, so I used them, but I have no idea what was wrong with the 1x12 plates that came with the rest of the set. I did get one defective piece, looks like a short shot, on this 2x2 round plate, but I just replaced it from my tub of pieces, and I was able to get my build going. Now, I'm not going to get into too much more detail about the build, because this is just very typical of the BlueBrixx builds that I've done so far. It uses the same stud reversal techniques I've seen in other sets, where you insert the little beads on the inside to turn an anti-stud into a stud, or it has places where you add a ring piece to turn a stud into an anti-stud. And unlike the last build that I did with Voyager, this model actually avoids the illegal stud on the side problem, where it uses stud reversal and ends up with studs on the side that are actually off by half a plate. But I will get into that more later. Another common element of these Star Trek sets is that it has a stand that is built in the shape of the Starfleet logo. And also the set comes with the printed tile to show that this set represents the Excelsior, that it was introduced in the movie Star Trek III, The Search for Spock, and it includes a silhouette of the ship, as well as very basic statistic of a length of 467 meters. The build starts with the secondary hull, which is the bottom part of the ship, which on the Excelsior, I think, at least in profile from the front, looks more like the bottom of a boat, whereas, say, on the Enterprise, it looks more like a tube. And I believe that shape is captured well here. You've got the blue deflector dish that's kind of recessed in a bit. And one of the other features is how flat the back is. It's like the boat part, or the big part of the ship in the secondary hull is here, what's being held up by my hand. And you have these translucent blue pieces in the back. I don't know what they represent. Maybe they're the impulse engine on this class of ship, but you can see these, though, in the back of the Excelsior in some of the TV shows or movies, very briefly, but it is there, and it's a nice addition that the model makers included that. The nacelles are attached using struts that are actually right angles instead of like a V from the back of the secondary hull, like the Enterprise is. It actually doesn't raise the nacelle up very high above the rest of the ship, but it does capture the shape of the model that is used in the movies. Otherwise, there's not a whole lot distinctive about the nacelles other than they're long and thin. There were no lights visible from the nacelles in the movies when the ship was shown, which was something that surprised me. So there are no translucent pieces here in the nacelles of the model. One kind of interesting thing, though, is these dark pieces here. That is not black. It's also not dark gray, and it's real hard to see here on camera. But there's actually some marbling in there, kind of like what the difference is between dark gray and flat silver is what the difference is between this color and black. So I don't know what you'd call it, but it gives it definitely a unique color that you would not see necessarily in official Lego. But I would imagine that Batman would still be okay working in it. And then finally, one last thing about the nacelles is because of their length, I actually think that they're already starting to sag a bit at the back. If you kind of compare where these are compared to the bookshelf in the back or the shelf in the back, you can actually see it angling down just slightly. And last but not least, we'll look at the saucer section, which I think is off a little bit. Here I'm going to show you the ship straight on. And really, if it wasn't for the shape of the secondary hull, it doesn't look much different than if I was looking at an Enterprise because of how flat the saucer section is here. In fact, the Advent Calendar version, with just its simple dish as a saucer section, I think better captures the shape than this larger model. There are printed bricks here with the name USS Excelsior NX2000, and those bricks are actually printed on the top and the bottom. And they come pre-assembled in a Ziploc bag showing that they were put together before the printing was applied. So most of the saucer is just one brick thick with a lot of stud on the side construction. The top of the saucer is completed by adding a few plates and tiles to build it up to where you get the bridge. And then you've got this sand blue section here that kind of extends to the back, which is something that I had to do a little bit of looking up to verify how accurate that is, because most of the time when we see the Excelsior in the movies, you're either seeing it straight on or you don't see that, or you're coming up from just underneath, or you see it coming by from just underneath. And you don't ever see that part. So I had to do some freeze frames to actually see how accurate that is. And it turns out that it is reasonably accurate. Plus, it does show up when you look close at when the model was used for other Star Trek shows. And finally, I want to show you how this model actually overcomes the illegal stud on the side problem that the Voyager model had. I'll take this off. And you see, we've got 6 studs here. That this is a 1 by 1 by 1 2/3 brick, and this is a 1 by 1 by 1 2/3 brick, just pointed the other way, whereas these are 1 by 1 stud on the side bricks that are both pointed the same way. Now the problem that I had with Voyager is they used 1 by 1 bricks that pointed the opposite way, which is what made the studs off by half a plate. However, even though these 2 bricks here, the 1 by 1 by 1 2/3, are actually pointing opposite ways, that's okay, because each of those bricks is exactly 5 plates high, which is the width of 2 studs. So it actually doesn't matter which way they point. The studs are all going to line up to something more friendly that I can put this 1 by 8 brick on without any trouble at all. Here, just to demonstrate what I'm talking about, I've got some sample bricks here. These are not exactly 1 by 1, but they'll serve the purpose. I'm going to line up 2 of these here to be lined up upside down from each other. And when I place a plate over the across both of them, you can see they're both lined up perfectly. Whereas if I do the same thing here with these two bricks, which are just 1 brick tall instead of 1 2/3, and I put a plate across them. I apologize for the shaky camera work here because I'm trying to film and build at the same time. You can see everything's all crooked. And it's off essentially by the height of a stud, which is why reversing studs with just single bricks with studs on the side doesn't work near as well as if you did bricks that are 1 2/3 high. So I'd say on a scale of Scotty to Sulu, I'd rate this model more towards Sulu. The shaping of the secondary hull and nacelles are a good representation of the Excelsior, and the designers did what they could with the saucer. I doubt there'll ever be a larger brick-built model of this ship, as it's not the primary ship of any Star Trek property, although it is probably the most reused Starfleet ship, so I'm happy I got this, even if the box ended up destroyed. But I still have a lot of Star Trek building to do. I have sets representing the original series, Next Generation, and Deep Space Nine, and original cast movies still to show. But until I get to them, remember, today is a good day to build.